Hello and welcome to Churchy Chats with the Church Girl. I am so excited because tonight is the season 3 premiere. I am just ecstatic that we are still going and that you are still tuning in. And tonight, you are in for a wonderful episode. My name is Alicia Wiley. If this is your first time here, I am the owner and creator of A Church Girl, which is a clothing line and a lifestyle brand that seeks to inspire and uplift everyone we have the privilege of connecting with. As I said, this is season 3, and we are now airing on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all platforms. And of course, you can always watch on your favorite platform. Listen, tonight's show is extra special. So before we even get into it, I need you to share this broadcast, get your family, friends, all the church folks you know in the room to join this conversation. This is the Musicians Tell All Churchy Chats edition. And listen, it's going to be bananas, so you're not going to want to miss this. Let's get started. I'm going to get our guest for the evening in the room. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Churchy Chats. I am so glad to have you all here this evening. I want each of you to introduce yourselves, starting with JoJo. Then we will move to Lauren, and then we will go to Rich, and then we will move to Renata, and then John. Just introduce yourselves to the Churchy Chat audience, and let's get ready to chat it up.
What's up, everybody? My name is JoJo Martin. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Let's go.
Let's get it. Welcome back, Lauren.
Hello, my name is Lauren Spearman. I also go by the moniker The Bounce Back Advocate, and I am an Oh, did I say international? Did I just prophesy that?
Come on, shut up.
I was going to say an inspirational speaker. An inspirational speaker, podcaster, and I am committed to the task of social justice as well. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Amen. Amen. Rich, introduce
Good
yourself.
evening. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Richard Moss III. I'm a musician at the Oakland Church in Kenner and also on the ministerial staff, where I have been a minister for the last 10 years and a drummer there going on 19 years. And I'm also the drummer for Created to Worship, Louisiana Freeman Missionary Baptist General Association, and also Louisiana Fellowship Choir.
Okay.
And happily married to the sweetest woman that I know, Brandy Moss.
That part.
Yes.
To God be the glory. Renata,
Amen.
welcome back to Churchy Chat, sis.
Hello. Thank you for having me once again, Alicia. I love you. My name is Renata. I am here, but I am from Brooklyn, New York. I am a director of operations at a middle school during the day, or 8 hours of the day, sometimes 14 hours of the day. The rest of the 24 hours, I'm an entrepreneur, author, and lover of all things self-care.
Yes, yes. John, talk to the people.
Yeah, I am excited to be here on today. John Walker, I am a music educator in New Orleans public school system. I am a musician in the great city of New Orleans. I'm not gonna go through all the other stuff because I'm ready to dive in and get through and get to talking.
Well, let's get to talking. Thank you all for being here tonight. And I already know this is going to be a great conversation. So let's dive in. So you all are church musicians, and often you play for more than one church, or you will pick up what is called in the music world a gig, right? But it's church. So enlighten us. Do musicians consider services a time for worship? And if it's not at their church, let me put that caveat in there. If it's not at your church, if you're just picking up a gig and it's a service, do you consider that a time of worship? And I mean, even if it is at your church, is your mind so programmed to gigs that the worship part is secondary? Talk to us.
I think that some musicians do just see it as a gig. And there's several reasons behind that.
Mm-hmm.
One, church and business can be two very gap filled relationships. And so when you walk into a church, sometimes that isn't your home church. And sometimes when it is, you view that as a gig and as what I'm here employed to do. But me personally, I tend to get engaged as more than that only because I never want to be seen saying, y'all church and y'all this and y'all pastor and y'all that. I always like to
Yes.
include myself in whatever they're doing, even though I may not be a member, because their members' tithes are what's paying my salary, and I'm not coming in there for less than what their members can afford to pay. So I tend to try to be able to make sure that they feel like I'm not an outsider just doing a job, but that I really am concerned and care about them and their ministry and their vision, and I want to be all in.
That's good. That's good.
That's
Rich,
awesome.
John, y'all want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think like in the beginning of my music career, when I first started playing, I used to treat church just as that. I used to treat it
Mm-hmm.
as a gig, because I mean that's how I was treated. I was treated as an employee. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
in some cases I wasn't. My opinion wasn't valued in in certain meetings, or if they had whole group settings where a church had a meeting or something like that. Uh, Musicians, if you weren't a member, we didn't have a voice.
Now, let me stop you right there. If you're not a member, should you have a voice?
Yes,
Um,
because if you have people in your church that could do what you're paying us to do, then you would have hired them. So there, that means there's nobody in here that's capable of giving you the sound that you want as a ministry. And so you hired us to do it. So we should have a voice in that sound and the
Okay.
decisions that are made, I think.
Oh,
Sorry.
I
okay.
totally agree.
Okay.
I totally agree.
Interesting. Sorry to cut you off, John, but
no,
continue.
you fine. Trust me. But me and a pastor, we had a conversation about that before, and he just, I guess, in a sense, he was trying to keep down confusion because
Mm-hmm.
some of his members were so very passionate about only members speaking on certain topics or having certain voices when it came down to what
Mm-hmm.
happened in the church. And I guess my push towards him was, you're always, the church is always pulling on us to make sure that certain things are in place and certain things happen. So for us to
That's
not
true.
have a voice in certain settings, it wasn't, in a sense, it wasn't justifiable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very extensive dialogue. Some and then as always, some people got their feelings hurt. I was fine. Uh,
Of course you were.
yeah, I was fine. But
You were the
I
problem.
mean,
You were the problem. No, I'm
well,
just playing.
I mean, in ministry, I've
I was just
learned that
joking.
you gotta you can't wear your feelings on your shoulders when it comes down to ministry, and especially when it comes down to certain conversations. I mean, that some of my best whippings from God came from in church.
Yeah, understandable. Completely. Rich, come on in the room. What you think, sir? Or is it just a gig or is it a
Well,
worship experience?
well, all right. So I personally look at it as it's a worship service, and then it's a gig second. You
Mm-hmm.
know, as a musician, you're going to fulfill your duties at either your home church or at another ministry. But I still put it as a worship service first, and then it's a gig second. That's just my perspective. I'm called in to do a certain duty. I'm gonna do my duty, but I want to put the worship service too. I want to be able to, be able to be effective to the worship
Mm-hmm.
service as well.
Sure.
So and also I want to be able to help the ministry in any way I can.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm there for that, that particular service, or whenever, whenever I'm needed again, do the same thing. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. So, gentlemen, you all know, and ladies, you all can chime in whenever. You all are accused of walking out on the preacher. Now, I understand, you need a little bathroom break, but sometimes it be feeling more like a smoke break. I don't know. I'm not judging nobody. I'm just saying.
Uh-oh.
So, can y'all talk to us about what's the deal with walking out on the preacher?
So I can talk about I'll go ahead and say this. I know for me personally, I play for two churches, the same pastor. So he's fully aware that sometimes we don't necessarily get a bathroom break in between us traveling between two different churches. But I will admit that there have been times where I have not been too fond of whoever's up behind the pulpit, and I decided to take a very extensive restroom break.
So sometimes it's a true need. Other times it's,
I'm a
an
musician that
extended
loves
need.
good. I'm not just a musician, but I'm also a preacher, so I know the preacher. So if I can tell when the preacher didn't study, and I have a bad habit. I've actually said that before. Oh yeah, you didn't study that, Doc.
So JoJo, you actually, the bishop that this question is kind of stemming from,
Yes.
very well known bishop who did an open rebuke over the pulpit to his musicians for walking out. What do you feel about the subject?
I've been a part of those open rebukes on that very self-same stage, my auntie would say. So I grew up a certain way. I grew up where we didn't walk in church. I grew up where it was a sign of respect to stay in a place. I've been a part of the whole thing where I would sing and leave these churches and want my money and all this other type of stuff. I feel about that particular situation that you expect. I think it's one of the things where you expect people that you're paying to stay in and do the job. You get a break at work, you get lunch break at work, but that's 8 hours of work. You're in church for a couple
Right.
hours. Then for people to not be in place when you need them to be in place, um, that's a whole different type of subject. So if you're walking out to go use the restroom, get you some water, could be a smoke break, but a good Newport will only last you so long before you
Period.
back in church. Not a 25-minute
Listen.
sermon, because everybody in here know
Listen.
he ain't gonna preach longer than 25 minutes.
Right.
So if you can't get back to where you're supposed to be in time, and I've talked to all of them, I understand what happened. I'm fully aware. However, it's about you being where you need to be. It doesn't matter where you're standing in church or whether you're walking out. As long as you're where you need to be in time. But I think it was more of a respect thing for him. You know, it's crazy to say I stayed and heard you play praise and worship, because every preacher should be in praise and worship. However, that is kind of the view. We're listening at you do your thing, be in church when it's time for me to do mine.
Now, I'm Rich. I'm coming to you, but you brought up an interesting subject. Some preachers don't come in until after praise and worship has gone forth, or even sometimes, you know, if it's a choir song right before they preach, it's not as traditional as it used to be. We used to know that it was, praise and worship and so many choir songs, but they'll stay until the last minute, or they'll stay out until the last minute. What are you all's thoughts as musicians and even as church girls about the preacher coming in midway the service? Should he be just like he expects you to be in for his part? Should he be in for your part? Because let's be honest, it's important for you to kind of get a feel of the house and the way that things are going and the worship and the praise, or if the people are heavy that day, if the people are, it's important. But from you all's vantage point, should they be in the room when y'all are doing y'all's thing?
It's not about us doing our thing. You should be in praise and worship, period.
That's
You
the
should be
thing.
preparing your heart. And if you if you didn't study well enough the night before or during the week or whatever you
It's too
do,
late.
it's too late. And if you're still needing to study when you get to church, you're about to preach too long. And yes, I will either be texting or surfing Instagram while you're past 25 minutes, or I will not be in your service. It's
I think
2021, almost two.
I
There's so many. Go ahead, Alicia. Sorry.
No, go ahead,
Oh
Rick.
wow.
There's so many perspectives to that, right? And having been a church administrator for a few years, maybe I've experienced things in a different way. But like, there are times when Bishop was either out of town or like on assignment somewhere else, and so it's more about booking, which would have been the reason he was not at praise and worship, right? Because he's on his way back from somewhere else, other reasons. But I know of scenarios where preachers are just like sitting in the office or sitting in their room, and like worship is going forth, and the adjutants are just waiting to bring them in. And everybody's like, well, is Pastor here today? Is preacher here today? Because I need to know who's preaching, because I would be real upset if I came here to hear somebody else or what. So I think from that standpoint, I've always like wondered, like, where, like, what's going on? Where are they? Why are they not here, like, leading the people into worship? You are part of the leadership that leads the people into worship. So it's always been interesting to see the different perspectives around that scenario.
I think for me, it depends on what they're doing. Because as you talked about, the shepherd of the house feels the weight in the hearts of the people. So if he feels like he needs to be alone, still in full meditation in order to receive his last downloads from God, you know, if God maybe deposits something into him that makes him change his sermon, don't look at me like that, JoJo, that makes him change his sermon last minute, because that happens a lot. You'll prepare something all week and then you get in the house and God is like, no, go this route, because there's somebody there that needs to hear something. So it's truly you tapping into your relationship, your conversation with the Father, you preparing, because you're going to pour out and you're going to be depleted. So that does take preparation. That does take you to get in the right mind space so that you can decrease yourself and you can channel what God is saying. Then I fully approve of you being in your office preparing. There are also some ministers that are entertaining guest ministers. So they'll be back in the office, you know, kind of showboating and not, I won't say showboating, but, you know, showing them around the office, making sure that they are catered to and having their conversations. But if he's in there, you know, smoking a Newport or doing whatever, then I don't approve of it. So it just depends on how they're spending that time.
Yeah, if you're just running down the clock, then of course that's a little obnoxious. But to your point, Lauren, I think it's important to some degree for that last minute download. I almost think there is a part of you that needs to be a part of the worship experience to even get that last minute download. I know that the Lord is very capable of telling you in your office that you need to change your sermon, but it's something about being in the worship experience. I don't consider myself a preacher, but I do preach. And I want to be in the space. I want to be with all the goings on. And I know I'm not a pastor, and there are different, you know, concerns and things like that, but I want to be there from the top to the bottom so that I can get a true feel for the house. Because sometimes in isolation, you know, the things that we feel, it might be self a little bit, you know, but I think when we put ourselves into the worship experience, we really allow God to give us those last minute, you know, changes and downloads, as my daddy always calls it. I'm getting a download from heaven. Okay, fair. But that's usually on the pulpit. Not saying that that's every preacher, but, you know, he usually gets them in the worship experience. But Rich, come on, talk to us. We kind of usurped the situation before you could get an opportunity to speak on it. What are your thoughts?
Personally, I believe that as a preacher, you should be in worship as well, because as you know, we're singing the word. You're getting ready to preach the word, and it all goes in hand in hand. You know, we are working together to make the worship service a great experience. I can't speak for every pastor, but I know my pastor is in church, the whole time, unless they have to step out for a second, and come back. But otherwise, I just believe that the preacher or pastor, whoever it is, it should be a part of worship as well, so we can all just, we feed off of each other. That's my personal
Absolutely.
perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair assessment. It's hard to labor among people. I'm not a musician, no, but I'm involved in the service, and it's hard to gel with people, or it's hard to connect with people who are just not there. And I'm handing the mic to you, and you literally just walked in the door. That doesn't work.
Right.
Because you weren't in this experience. And I'm not saying that God is not giving you what you need, but you need to be in the house. And that's just the way I feel about it. So,
And another side, sorry, I
go
don't want
ahead.
to.
Go ahead.
Another side of that is that also keeps you as a pastor and a preacher for coming in and destroying a moment that a worship leader has labored over to prepare the atmosphere for you. And
That.
because you haven't been in there, now you've destroyed that entire
Oh
moment
my God.
and started all the way over from the beginning. And then you want to have a leadership meeting about how the atmosphere wasn't right on Sunday. Nigga, you wasn't in there for the atmosphere. So what is you talking about?
Keep it real, JoJo.
Awesome.
Keep
Run
it
me my
real.
money and hush.
Keep it real. And I think that happens as well. And we've all seen it happen. And for the people who help to make it happen, I know we like to say that, the spirit moves it, but we would be lying flat out to say that we do not labor in such a way to get that lather up. We are here to encourage people to praise. We are here to encourage people to lay their burdens down. We are pushing them into God's presence.
But
And that is a labor. Go ahead, Lauren.
to take it back to the musicians and put the musicians back in the hot seat, I do remember that I went to Atlanta, Georgia, and I was a part of a friend's rehearsal, and he truly anointed. He operates like a well-oiled machine. He's an amazing, masterful person in his craft. And the musicians actually showed up later than the call time. And when the preacher went up and was about to record his sermon, because it was pre-recorded, they began to pack up their things as if they were going to leave. And I remember said friend was like, hold on, like, how can they just come late? And they were going to leave early. And, what if the musician needed them for when he was going to tune up? So I would just like said friend to comment on that situation.
For one, I don't do late. I don't like late musicians. I don't like being late. I have been late. This month I've been late. I hate it though. I hate that. And the thing that about those particular musicians were that they all of a sudden I have gigs to do. Well, we wouldn't even be here at 9 o'clock if y'all were here to start recording at 6 as the church requested. You know what I'm saying? So not only were you late, but two of y'all are high. I'm now got a contact from the bass player who is higher than Cat Williams. So at this point, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how seriously do you take an opportunity to be a part of a pre-record that you don't have to do no rehearsals for? You coming in, you're recording, you're doing your part, and you're going home. But you don't know what the preacher needs. If it was church, you wouldn't be walking out after praise and worship.
Right.
But you want to be paid on time. And those good people, they had that money. That check was ready by the time we got done. But they were packing up like while the preacher was up pre-recording his sermon. I'm thinking to myself,
y'all ain't even
we didn't start recording until almost 8 because y'all did not get here on time. Amen.
Amen.
So I mean, it works both ways, right? I think the musicians play a part, the worship staff, of course, plays a part, and the pastor / preacher probably plays the largest part, because if there is to be a shift in the atmosphere, they are the ones that will shift it most likely. So yeah, there's that. So Listen, Saints, I am curious. I know that many, well, I know personally a few musicians who play both in church and outside of church. And let's just say secular music. In your opinion, is it okay to play secular music? And when I say is it okay, I mean mainly the venues in which you play that secular music. Is it okay to be at, a club or a bar on Saturday night? And then, at the church house on Sunday morning? Or how do, what is, how do y'all feel about that? Is that okay? Is that all good?
Oh, he, I think, I think, I. So here's the thing. I recently just started, like probably a couple of years back, actually doing the whole secular scene,
Okay.
and it's a different animal. It's a real different animal. That's a real different spirit. And so I had to learn how to detox myself from that setting prior to going to worship on a Sunday morning. And that's not an easy process. So do I think it's okay? I think so if musicians can handle it. Sometimes I've seen musicians get caught up in the secular lifestyle and then try to bring that into church. And that's where the disconnect happens. Because that won't ever mix. I mean, for instance, people been smoking weed and doing drugs on the secular scene for years.
Mm-hmm. And in church.
Now it's starting to bleed. True, but now you're starting to see it more
Mm-hmm.
on the
Openly.
church side openly. I mean, that was a time where if you did it and you were in church, nobody knew.
Right.
And now
You were
people have gotten
discreet.
so comfortable. Right? People have gotten so comfortable with doing what they do on the secular side now on church grounds.
What is that
That's
detox process that you speak of? What does that consist of?
so it consists of anointing oil that my pastor himself has prayed over. Um, it consists of much prayer over not just myself, but over my house, my
John, are you playing
car.
at the strip club?
No, oh my God, no, I don't play. I don't play there.
I just need to understand.
I,
It's like you go through this exorcism.
no, but so like secular world. When I mean it's a different animal. It's a completely different animal. I mean, when you go to church, you have people. Granted, we're part of the worship squad, and people are actually enjoying and invoking the presence of God. On the secular scene, we're playing things. Music is an emotional thing anyway.
Yes, correct.
On the secular side, you're playing something that feels good to somebody, but the lyrics and what they're feeling is different. They're not lifting their hands to worship God on the secular side.
Agreed.
So it's a lot that goes on the secular side. I wish we had more time to talk about it, but that detoxing process it's very extensive and it requires a lot of patience and a lot of concentration because I dare not carry that spirit over into church the following day.
Okay. So JoJo, Rich, how do you all feel about it? Can you do both?
Personally, I don't see a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
If long as, like John had said, long as it doesn't affect your worship on Sunday morning, your worship service on Sunday morning, I don't see nothing with it because I'm like, that's what musicians, that's what that's their job, that's their livelihood. I don't personally see nothing wrong with it because I know one time I was walking on, I believe it was Frenchman, and they had a lot of musicians that I know that play in church. They was up in there playing. And I mean, they was getting down. I'm about to go in and do some dancing. I didn't realize, hold up. but but hey, I mean they working. That's their livelihood. I personally don't see nothing wrong with it, but I was always taught you can't do both, but that's my way of thinking. Like if that's their livelihood, can't take it away from them. That's
right. JoJo, what are your thoughts?
I've been doing it and I still do it. So I didn't have a problem with it. My parents were pastors. My father's still a pastor. My mother passed, but I didn't grow up in a house where we could listen to all different types of music. Now, my brother did get a whooping for having a Murder Was the Case CD. Well, it was a cassette. Snoop Dogg's Murder Was the Case. We couldn't listen to Snoop until we got a little older. But other than that, it was a well-rounded house. So being on tour with PJ, I started when I was 19, and we were doing clubs, and most of the time I wasn't even old enough to be in there. I could only sing and lead. But all those years up until now, hearing different people say to me, your job is to be a light. I'm responsible for me when I'm in that world.
Yes.
So it's not rocket science. Either I'm going out there to be like them, or I'm going out there to do my job and still know who I am and not lose control. Now, have I? Absolutely. I've done some terrible things and still went to church Sunday, and God used me in a mighty way. I don't take that for granted. I'm not saying that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, I listen, I wore Incredible God out in the ground. The people was telling me you could smell Jameson in my pores. I was completely and totally hungover, but an Incredible God still deserved an incredible praise, and I did just that. Amen. But it's like I listened to some different people in these different reformations or different places, and they really believe that you should not do that. But I don't see a problem with that. It's about you. It's about your life. Even when I was out with Dave Hollister, as y'all know, he's a bishop now, and Dave, it comes from Blackstreet and all this other stuff, but he's still doing his thing. Then you got to look at Al Green, who most people cannot even pull up an Al Green gospel album anywhere, but that church is packed every Sunday, and he's preaching in there, and he still ain't trying to record no gospel music.
Still not.
That's right.
This kind of a little bit stems from that, because what I was thinking about as you all were talking is, a lot of times if you are, a leader in the church or anything like that, you're up front. You have to be careful where you go, what you do, because it will, can destroy your witness. And I don't know if musicians really feel the weight of that quite as much, because I guess I can say in some areas it's slightly different. But there are some rules for like the elders and people up front, like, you can't be shacking, or you can't, get somebody pregnant and y'all not married. Should those same rules that apply to, the elders, the worship staff, and the people apply to the good musicians? I mean, some people feel like it shouldn't. Others feel like, it should extend to the musicians. But what do you all think? Should it extend to the musicians, or should that be a little, amended for the minstrels?
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So I can talk about this firsthand. And let me first say that the amount of pressure that's on ministry workers overall when it comes down to their lifestyle is outrageously huge. And it actually, and I'm gonna be completely transparent. That kind of pressure sent me into depression back in like 2016, because I was that man who had a kid out of wedlock and didn't know how to face that, knowing who I was in church, what I did in church. And until I had the conversation with my pastor, he was like, son, I understand what you did, but I'm not going to sit you down because it doesn't disqualify your anointing. And if anything, it multiplied it in the midst of what I was dealing with. And when I tell you mentally, it will drain the individual because of the mere fact we're always the ones out front. So it's like you try to paint this picture of, okay, since I know my friend, since I know I have all of these eyes looking up to me, looking at me, uh, let me show them this particular lifestyle, not knowing that I'm battling a spirit or a demon when I leave here. So honestly, I honestly think it's ministry work is across the board. It should high, period. But at the same time, I don't think it should weigh as much as it does over the course of the years, man. Because that I've seen pastors commit suicide behind this mess.
Agreed. And while I see and understand your perspective, can we not argue that to whom much is given, much is required? Can we not argue that when you commit to ministry, what that looks like? And I think now it's different. When we were coming up, it was more like it's not about what you do, it's how you do it, right? So let's not pretend that the saints of old were living this upstanding lifestyle as much as they were living it away from the eyes of the saints. Now though, I believe that we are a little freer in our indiscretions, and like only God can judge me.
I absolutely agree.
Here's the thing that I'd love to know, especially from musicians. Are you like confessing your sins one to another? Because I feel like everything is always like hush hush. Like everyone knows it happened, everyone knows it's happening, but no one is actually talking about the thing. It's kind of the elephant in the room every time. Even if there is like someone is sat down, nobody really knows why they were sat down. They kind of a little bit, but not really sure. Do you guys feel like it is something like you should apologize to the congregation about, considering you have such a prominent role? Because like pastors and preachers are expected to like address the congregation when something that serious happens.
Anybody who wants to chime in on that one?
There is no, I mean, there may be some musicians that will hold each other accountable, but it's very rare. And the churches are only going to do so much because they need you to do your job at the end of the day.
I was gonna say
So
that.
there's no huge responsibility because I've been told, keep it quiet. Don't let anybody know as long as nobody finds out. And I'm thinking to myself, so do you care about me or where I go or what happens to
That
me?
part.
And there's only a select few that really do genuinely. That's why the relationship between churches or leadership and musicians is so strained, because you care about me as long as your agenda is met. But once something happens that may jeopardize that, then you really show that all I was to you was a workhorse. And then that I in turn show to you that all you are to me is a paycheck. So why am I sitting down when the same girl I slept with, you slept with before me as the
Oof.
pastor? So where is the accountability anywhere? How do you rebuke me without somebody being able to rebuke you? Not saying that somebody has to be me,
Sure.
My
but you
God.
know what I'm saying? We got two different sides of the spectrum. You're mad at me for getting her pregnant, and I'm mad at you for sleeping with her son. So what's the difference?
Oh my
Where
God.
does it all
Speak your mind.
end? All of
Just speak
this
your mind,
is
JoJo. Speak your
in
mind.
all, all of this is in the church. You know what I'm saying? And there's no way to come to the end of it without everybody being honest with the people involved. That don't mean the church got
Agreed.
to know. But technically, if I just work here and you don't care about me like that, then what am I apologizing to your church for?
Ooh.
Pull up on me.
I'm clutching my imaginary pearls.
Yes. 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 What you got, Lauren? What you
Oh.
got?
Whew. Um. Wow. I don't. I think this is the first time I've been caught speechless like this in one of these conversations. But um, I know that one of the things I've always wondered about is as far as the pay scale for musicians. It seems as though musicians are at the top of the food chain, either equal to the pastor, sometimes even more than the pastor. And going back to what JoJo said, is because they are necessary. And I know in certain regions there's even a shortage of available musicians, to the point where I know of a certain situation where one minister prophesied to a visiting musician that God told him that his season was up at his current church and that he was supposed to be at the new church.
That's out of
And
order.
and he, I guess, said a couple of other things that kind of hit to the
Period.
heart of the musician. So the musician felt as if the entire prophecy in totality was true and left his church. So my question would be, is there any sense of loyalty to the church that you belong to, that you are of service to, or if it is it like money talks?
Good question.
Loyalty got to be in your blood. That's got to be who you are. If you're not a loyal person all around, then wherever you go, whoever's offering this, you see disloyalty in every phase of their life if they're not a loyal person. So it ain't gonna matter.
Yeah, and I think preachers and pastors, they some. I mean, I would never talk bad about preachers and pastors. My dad's a pastor. However, I think there's a select group of them who do whatever it takes to get what they want. So if I have to, I'm not saying that the Lord didn't give that man a word for this young man. However, comma, if I want you at my church, then I'm going to twist that thing and manipulate that thing to make you feel like you really thus saith the Lord, so you don't really have a choice. But one thing about the good Lord is order. And there's no way in the world, if this musician is not only a member of another church, I mean, not only playing at another church, but a member of another church, is the Lord going to tell you to tell that man, at least publicly, that it's time to move. Now, that's just out of order. I don't care, how you shape that. So I think with the musician pool, sometimes being small, they want who they want, and however they have to get them, they get them. Especially if the money is a thing, there's so many ways that they can manipulate to get what they want. It's sad, but it happens all the time, and
it definitely does happen all the time. I've seen pastors basically in a bargaining match behind musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell you, it's crazy how and it's pastors that know each other. They'll send the musician and say, okay, well, let him know this is what I'm offering you.
But let me ask you, John, do you all let yourselves get caught up in that? Or do you say, I'm not being sold to the highest bidder?
Yeah, because that was going to be my question. If I was to come to you right now and I say I'm starting Spearman Evangelistic Ministries, I think you sound amazing. I think you are the right musician that I need to tune me up
and she
when
sent
I
her
go out
son
on the
down to
stage.
tell you,
and I say I'm going to pay you double whatever you're getting. Is it a sense of, no, I'm at my church, they treat me well, this is where I'm being fed? Or is it a sense of, well, it's my livelihood, so if you're paying double, I'm going with you?
No, there's definitely churches that musicians and singers will move for. And I hear all the time, if the package is right, we gone.
I mean, you've been seeing it with pastors for the last year.
mm-hmm.
This is true.
So you start your church from the ground, and then somebody offers you a beautiful package, and where are you? And where are your people?
Package.
That's right. So I mean, it really musicians also this year, honestly, because there has been a musician shortage, with churches trying to restructure and get back into going into the building and all this other type of stuff. The issue has been a lot of the people that I have reached out to, just not knowing where they are, if they are at churches, because most of them were touring before the pandemic. But most of them have been honest in saying, I'm already at a church, but I can refer somebody. But a few years ago, people were jumping around a lot, but musicians now aren't where they were. A lot of them have matured and they've grown up, and consistency is key. You got children, you got people to take care of, you got mouths to feed and different things you're trying to do. So is it worth it to go to the next church where, trust me, if Evangelist Lauren has told you that, then soon as she hears somebody better than you, she's going to tell them that. And guess where you're going to be? Trying to call back to that old church where they've hired somebody now that knows what loyalty is. That's right, bedside.
And I think it's about, nobody expects you to stay in a place that, you're not being fed or you have outgrown. I just think when it comes to the politics of it, it can be a little touchy. It can be a little, like that.
I wish people could see this private chat. This private chat is so
Rich, before we go on to the next question topic, would you like to speak on this a little bit? I don't know if he can hear us.
She talking to you, Reverend.
I'm sorry, I was having a bad feedback. Everything was kind of bad.
You know if I got COVID over there?
Don't speak that on me. Nah, I'm good.
It's not a Teddy Riley ministry. We're not speaking.
Personally, let me see how I'll put this. I'm trying to grab it together. I've been in situations where I was offered to go other churches as well. I did at one time attempt to go somewhere else, and the Lord basically stopped me and said, no, this is where I want you. And I just personally believe that, well, God places you, that's your assignment, and wherever he places you, he's going to provide. And I just believe you don't personally abandon the assignment that God placed you to go somewhere else because they're paying $50, $100, or $200 more, And honestly, money ain't always everything, because you may be going to another ministry, but what are you getting yourself into? But they giving you this X amount of dollars. Like, how many days you got to be there? How many hours you have to be there? How many services you have to pay? And if they paying you this much, and they paying $200 more, yada yada yada, does that include extra engagements? Or does that include when the pastor going to preach somewhere and the choir is going? Do you get paid for that? Or you just, because if you salary, that's everything included in that one package. Like, we pay you salary, that means when the pastor got to go preach somewhere, they expect you to be there. So,
right.
Yep.
I love what you said there. But that was good what you said there. Assignment versus a gig. So that just tells me right there where your heart posture is and how you consider this a true ministry is what you're doing, because you look at it on a deeper level. Like, yeah, I can go to this other church and I can make more money, but I can also expose myself to additional devils and spirits that God never even intended for me to have to encounter. So is it really worth it in the long run?
But how many riches are being taken advantage of? Your heart is right. You want to be there. You're loyal. You got to reach out and take care of him too. There's not a lot of musicians that can tell you they've been nowhere for 19 years. Not anymore.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But those people have also done 5-year bids at, not like a jail sentence, but 5-year terms at these churches, and ain't got no raise, no nothing. And then it's like you think you're at a place where you can join and you can be fed and they appreciate you. But then when it comes to those extra services and different things that you should take care of your musicians for, then it's like God's going to richly bless you. I know he is, but I want you to do the same thing too. Don't take advantage of me because I'm all in and with your vision and with your ministry. Don't take advantage of me.
So do you step up as that person that does that negotiation, or do you wait for that pastor to do the right thing? What's the protocol?
Ask. Now, speak to this. when you agree to go to a church, is there a contract? Is there an agreement to review your salary after so long? Or as musicians, do you say, okay, after so many years? Like, what is your protocol for, okay, it's time to bump me? How do you address that if it's
I
not
don't,
discussed on upon
right.
hiring?
I don't go anywhere without the paperwork, not anymore. Because when you're ready to make changes, you just make them. And if it's a business, and the Bible says in business, be men and this and that, then let's do it right. Write it down on paper. Let's both sign it. Let's know what we're signing and what we're agreeing to. That way, things do change, and people do need to walk away. But I ain't gonna walk away empty-handed, and neither should you. If I've done something wrong, you have the right to hire someone else. Then what covers me when you just don't want to pay me no more, or you found somebody else that you think could do my job better, and you can't find the reasons to get rid of me?
And what are your thoughts, John, Rich? Is it a certain time that, salary pay should be evaluated and bumped?
I personally believe
So, go ahead, Rich.
I personally believe that this is just me. If they see your dedication and your love for the ministry, they should come to you and say, let's talk about your salary. Seeing about giving you a little extra more. That's what personally happened with me, because I was faithful to the ministry and they saw that. But I personally shouldn't have to come to you and say, oh, I deserve a raise, or I deserve this, I deserve that. I believe that you see me doing my assignment and I'm going above what I'm doing, I shouldn't have to come to you. I believe that you should go to that, your musician or worship leader or whoever. They've been doing a phenomenal job and going way beyond their call of duty. I believe the pastor or the administrators will be like, we've been seeing you, doing your thing. We want to talk about giving you a raise. That's what I believe. That's
an interesting perspective. John, what say ye?
So here's my thing. Oftentimes I've seen musicians wait on the pastor, and 5 years go by, and nothing is said, nothing is done. And so I know for me, as the MD of my band, I've incorporated to it. We review contracts every year. Okay. With us reviewing, and the way I see it today, the band, we're not members of the church, so technically this is our job. So let's set up protocols and things in place to treat it as such. If we need to go through evaluations every quarter, or review the music ministry overall and set expectations and stuff like that. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but definitely the contract needs to be reevaluated every year. So that way, if there is room in the budget for growth in the salary, that's something that comes up.
So then
I think that's fair. Go ahead, Lauren.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. So then let's talk about the tithing piece, since this is your income and it is paid by the church. Do you tithe off of the income that the church gives you? Do you have them take it off the top? How do you handle that?
And Lauren, that is a great question. We are getting very close to the end of our hour. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get this good group back next week so that we can finish this conversation, because we have a lot of ground left to cover. Thank you all for being here tonight, and I'm already thanking you all in advance for coming back next week, because we have to go on and put them in the hot seat about these other topics that we have ready to discuss. Listen, thank you so much for tuning in to the season 3 premiere of Churchy Chats. I know I just put a 2 up. That was weird. But thank you for tuning in. Listen, you already know that this conversation, this situation is something you don't want to miss. So prepare yourself now to tune in next week for the continuation of the musician Churchy Chats Tell All episode. It's going to be amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And you can catch us here, same place, same time, next week on Churchy Chats with the Church Girl. Until next time, stay churchy, folks.